Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Bitcoin Source, the ultimate destination for everything Bitcoin. I have a very special guest and a good friend of mine, Robert Allen, in the building. Robert, could you start things off by introducing yourself to the audience?
Hey, Dowdy. Yeah, great to be here. So I go by Satoshi Sound on social media platforms. That's my handle. My name's Robert. Well, let's see. I've been in Bitcoin now for getting close to a decade, which is hard to believe it's been that long. It seems like it's only been a few years, but got into it. I was living in New York City at the time. I was working for the infamous Bitcoin hater Peter Schiff. I was selling gold. Worked in Midtown Manhattan, and I had been doing that for a few years. And I had bought into the gold bug theory for a while there, the thesis. And but as I worked in the industry, I started to realize that there was a lot of manipulation in those markets. And effectively, without going too far into detail, I would just say that I think that market is to a large degree captured, and they're able to use paper derivatives to essentially suppress and move the price around and control the market. So, and there's other issues, of course, with precious metals, but I guess the biggest being that it's difficult to store this stuff, so it ends up usually in vaults. And governments can, executive order 6102 them, and yeah, so there's problems, and there's a reason why we're no longer on a gold standard. But that was my world for a few years, and sort of towards the end of that, I started realizing that gold probably was not going to bring us the freedom that we were hoping for, and so I started kind of losing some of my fervor. And around that time, well, actually 2011, believe it or not, I had originally heard about Bitcoin at this Porcupine Freedom Fest in New Hampshire. And at the time, like so many people, I dismissed it and thought it was, prior to Bitcoin, digital scarcity was not a thing that existed, and so I didn't take the time to look. But then around 2013, I was on Zero Hedge and in places like that, and started seeing news about the price of Bitcoin hitting over $100. And so then I started to think, well, you know what, maybe I was wrong, or it's at least worth looking at this a little closer, because if it's a total scam, why is it still here? It's been a couple of years, the price is going up, something seems weird. So as I started reading about it, I pretty quickly found videos by Andreas Antonopoulos, found the white paper, read that. Didn't have an engineering background, but it made enough sense to me at that point that I just kept going down the rabbit hole. And I'd say fairly quickly I realized that there was a decent chance that this thing could actually work, and that we could achieve what sort of the libertarian Austrian economics types wanted, which was basically a world that had figured out how to divorce money from government, how to separate the two. And so that was really it for me. I quit selling gold a couple months after that in 2014. And then I started learning how to program. I figured that if this is going to be the future, well, either way, I wanted to do what I could to push it forward. And so I got into learning how to code. I had like so many early Bitcoiners, I did dabble in a bunch of different other altcoins, as we called them at the time. And, and I think in those early days, it was a bit more reasonable to be kind of questioning and looking around. And obviously I was there for the Bitcoin fork war. And yeah, and that was interesting. And I did pretty quickly, again, I guess, kind of patting myself on the back, but I looked both at, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, and after weighing the two and also seeing how the market moved, I felt like the arguments for small blocks ultimately did make sense. And I think when you have engineers who have built and scaled complex protocols, and they're telling you, look, this is not going to scale linearly, we have to figure out other ways to do this, that started to resonate with me and made sense. And so I wasn't super involved in all of that, but I was watching carefully, and I had some Bitcoin, and I sold my Bitcoin Cash and got more Bitcoin. So that was kind of cool to see that happen. And I cashed out on a couple of the other Bitcoin forks that happened that were less notable. Um, yeah, it was a very interesting time, and got into mining a little bit. That's difficult, especially back then, if you're not super technical, and especially if you're not like a command line guru, which I definitely wasn't at that time. It was a bit too challenging. Mostly, actually, more so than the software side, it was the hardware side. I had computer rigs that just kept breaking down, and I had actually moved them to my parents' farm in Ohio because the electricity costs were way too high in New York City. But every time the thing would break, I'd have to call my dad, and he'd have to go to the basement. And he was struggling to even understand what I was trying to tell him to do most of the time. So, long story short, we shut down our little, mining operation after maybe a year or so. But all these things were steps on the journey of learning. And then I had basically my shitcoin startup, which was called CoinCube, and we did algorithmic trading. We ended up doing, like, kind of the last iteration was a portfolio management tool that would connect to exchanges and automate a portfolio for people. And then, of course, which I think in some way was fitting, I had a bunch of money on an exchange and got robbed, and a bunch of Bitcoin, I should say, and got robbed, and learned a very hard lesson about not keeping your Bitcoin on exchanges, not your keys, not your coins. I had even known that, but, you know, greed is a powerful, dangerous thing. You got to master. Mastering your own greed is about half of the battle, I think, for any kind of investing, because the siren song of quick riches is still there for people. And now, if it's not altcoins or shit coins, a lot of people are using leverage, and I've got burned on that as well. So yeah, as Odell says, stay humble and stack sats, right? And don't try to get too smart with things. Just be patient and be humble. So that's kind of where I've landed, and become more and more in the direction of a Bitcoin, I guess, maximalist as time has gone on, and made it to a bunch of conferences. And I've also seen just the quality, the caliber of the Bitcoin community, and the people is just far superior to anything I ran into in other sort of alt or crypto type conferences that I went to earlier on. So I've definitely found my family, found my community, and excited to try to do what I can to help us make this happen for the good of everyone. So that's the abridged version.
Thank you for that. There's so much to unpack there, but what I really like about your journey is that you have had so many ebbs and flows, ups and downs in this Bitcoin journey, like so many of us have had. And what's beautiful is that even when you took losses, even when you lost your money or you got scammed, you still kept forward towards the mission. You still kept forward to continuing to learn, whether it was doing, like most Bitcoiners, they just buy Bitcoin on an exchange. If they get burnt, they either convert to the dark side and go and buy Cardano or some other cryptocurrency and think that that's easier.
Right.
Most people don't say, all right, I got burnt, I'm going to go mine. If I don't, mining doesn't work for me, I'm going to try to educate people. I'm going to go to meetups and try to see how many more people in the space that I can connect with. And
Right.
I think that that's what has created this kind of synergy of something that I really wanted to ask you, which is something that you've created in the space that I think a lot of people don't know about, but they need to, which is Bitcoin and Friends. And I wanted to ask you, what inspired the creation of the animated series Bitcoin and Friends? And what messages or themes did you hope to convey through those mediums? And before you answer that, Robert,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to give you a quick little like tidbit how I even found out about Bitcoin and Friends.
Mm.
So there's a woman by the name of Kit Stanwood. I don't know if she still is now, but she used to be the social media manager for Bitcoin Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed her and I asked her, I said, is there any like cartoons or like educational platforms online that I could watch that are really inspiring or creative and funny?
One of the last really fun ones I like to tell people about is Bitcoin and Friends. It's a cartoon on YouTube that has a few seasons on it.
Nice. I've never heard of Bitcoin and Friends, so I'm definitely going to check that out.
And she was just raving about this cartoon called Bitcoin and Friends. And I was like, I've never heard of it. What is it? She's like, go on YouTube, type in Bitcoin and Friends. You will not be disappointed. And I saw the first episode and I was completely blown away. So not to get long-winded,
Cool.
What inspired you to create Bitcoin and Friends?
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. So it's funny because as you were kind of talking about not giving up and persisting, the sort of beginnings of Bitcoin and Friends was actually because of my CoinCube project at the time. We were thinking about doing an advertisement, and by me or by we, I mean my brother and I. So I have a younger brother who is like a whiz at video production. He has a video production company. He's been at it for, I don't know, at least a decade or so. 15 years probably. He's been writing scripts since he was in high school. So he's wanted to be a filmmaker and and be in that world since he was young. But anyway, Chris and I were thinking about doing an ad for CoinCube, and at that time, as you know, as I just said, it was like this altcoin portfolio management thing, and so we were thinking to do sort of like an Alcoholics Anonymous ad where there'd be all these different coins. It's basically guys in like plushy coin shaped outfits, right? And they'd all be sitting around a table and talking about their problems and stuff like that. And we didn't do the ad. Actually, we had another brother of mine and his wife and kids actually sewed up these costumes for us. And then I forget what happened, but I think, long story short, we kept postponing and we never ended up doing it. But that was like the very seed of the idea of just, personifying a character or characters from this crypto world and doing something. And so that was sort of the very beginning. And then, I don't know, maybe 6 months or a year later, something like that, Chris came to me and, with this idea and said, well, why don't we do a show about Bitcoin? And, we could do a cartoon. It wouldn't be that expensive to produce. Obviously, compared to live action, cartoons are relatively inexpensive. And we had never done any cartoon, animation or anything like that. So that was a little bit scary, I guess, at first. But yeah, so that was the beginnings of it. We started going back and forth on character ideas and story arcs, and just kind of riffing on it. And then we decided, what, we've got enough here that is compelling, so let's do this. And so the very first episode, which is the one that you saw, we paid an animation company to do that, frame by frame animation. I think it was like an Eastern European company. I think we paid like over 20 to 30 grand, if I remember right, something like that. Plus, voice acting and other stuff. So, it was not cheap. I think we probably spent 40 grand on that. And we both put in several Bitcoin at the time. I have yet to earn those back from the project, so hopefully someday we will. But anyway, so that was the beginnings of it. And then what we found is, as we were going, the production cost was really just prohibitive. And we ended up finding a tool called Adobe Character Animator, which it really is like 5 or 10x, or I should say 5 or 10x reduced the cost and the time of doing animation. And so I found that tool pretty early on and learned how to use it. Ended up teaching Jake, and he's taken it much further than I in terms of his ability with it. So our main animator is Jake, and he also does the voice of Metallic and a couple other characters. So it's Chris, Jake, and I are really, I'd say, the three, the core people in the project. And then we've had voice actors. We got PD Pablo from, kind of 90s rap fame era. He's been voice acting for us, since the beginning, and has been great to work with. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And I guess to get sort of to what we're hoping to achieve, or, what our goal has been, I think Bitcoin, as a technology, is awesome. And I, am just blown away by it every time I work with it and use it. It's amazing. But for non-technical people, which, most people are more in that direction, it can be a little scary. And quite frankly, like, especially early on, technical people trying to pitch people on Bitcoin would get always into the technical weeds. And I even can find myself doing it still if I talk to people about Bitcoin. And so I think pretty early on with the show, we realized we want to explain why Bitcoin matters and not so much get bogged down in how it works. There's plenty of good explainers and videos and things for that, I think. But, nonetheless, I mean, most people have no clue how email works or how the internet works, and yet they use it every day. They trust it. They know they can rely on it. So, I mean, quite frankly, I don't think it's really necessary for the vast majority of people to understand how Bitcoin works. They need to understand why it matters, why they should care about it, and why it's superior money to anything that's ever existed. That's, I think, what our main focus has been and will be with the show is essentially how can we orange pill sort of more normie people? How can we tell the story of Bitcoin and get them to understand it in sort of this like gut level way? So that's it. And then, maybe part of that too is also just for fun for Bitcoiners in the Bitcoin community to have something to, enjoy together, laugh about the history, the people, and kind of just poke fun and have some fun with it all. So it hits on two levels. I think there's the Bitcoin, history side, and we weave some of that in there, and some of the technical stuff people will see and appreciate. But we've really tried to make it palatable and accessible to a broader audience. And just to be clear, we actually launched well, as you watched the original in 2019. The first episode has over 300K views, but then, which was awesome. And pretty quickly we thought, hey, we've got something here. We ran into issues with getting shadow banned by YouTube early on. Our second episode had half as many views. It just kept dropping off from there. We did 8 episodes. And, they had pretty good response overall, but part of the issue, I think, too, is that we were, because it was self-funded and low budget, it took us a while to get episodes completed. And so a lot of times people would watch an episode and then probably just forget about it because it would take a couple months for the next one. So we learned some things along the way. We also had a lot of profanity, which we've dialed that completely back. So there's no profanity in the new version, the relaunch. And it's probably 90% new content, really focused in on the core characters, Bitcoin, Metallic, Harold, and Jones. And we wanted to try to kind of riff more like a traditional sitcom where you really get to know these characters and you get to see them interact. And I think that really helps a lot to make it just more enjoyable to watch. The original season, I think the biggest issue we had is the story was kind of all over the place and we had too many characters and too much going on. So we've tried to really focus it in, better animation, and it's all 8 episodes are done at this point, minus like some small tweaks and embellishments, but they're basically ready to release. And so, so January 3rd, we're going to release the first 3. They'll be free to view on YouTube. Possibly we'll put them on X. And then we're going to have a Patreon. And then our plan is to release the last 5, probably every other week for the next, couple months. And we're going to put them on behind a paywall. We're not trying to get crazy here, but we really do need to see if there's enough of an audience that's willing to pay a little bit of money. $5 a month from a couple thousand people. We have more than enough budget to continue on producing the cartoon. But it's not, even with using Character Animator and doing some of the things we've done, it's still not cheap to produce. And, so we've got to make sure there's actually a viable business model here. And so that's our plan. And hopefully we'll get people to rally around us and support us just a little bit from a lot of people can go a long way. So that's the plan.
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay. What's the second best? There is no second best. There's no second best crypto asset. There's a crypto asset. It's called Bitcoin, right? Right? There's no second best. Okay. But take all your money, buy Bitcoin, then take all your time, figure out how to borrow more money to buy more Bitcoin, then take all your time and figure out what you can sell to buy Bitcoin. And if you absolutely love the thing that you don't want to sell it, go mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin with it. And if you've got a business that you love because your family works for the business that's in your family for 37 years and you can't bear to sell it, mortgage it, finance it, and convert the proceeds into the hardest money on earth, which is Bitcoin.
This channel is for education purposes only and is not affiliated with any financial institution. This is not financial advice. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, I love that. I'm really looking forward to seeing the new rollout of Bitcoin and Friends. I think that it's really innovative. It's different. Of course, there's tons of other cartoons out there, but I'm really, I'm a millennial, so I really like the whole kind of like South Park, Ren and Stimpy kind of vibe that it gives me. I think that it's just classic stuff, and I don't know about other generations, but as soon as I saw the caricature, the way that the characters are posed, even just educating people on Bitcoin, I was like, oh, this is different. This isn't just cut and dry like I mean, I'm an adult, so the profanity I didn't mind, but
Sure.
of course, when you have a cartoon, you always think about kids, but
Right.
it was just something different and unique that I've never seen in this space. And I think that that was a reflection of the 300K views you've seen, because it almost felt like it became like a cult classic in the Bitcoiner space where a lot of people knew about it. They weren't talking about it as much, but in the privacy of their home or on their mobile application, they'd be like watching the episode. And I
Right.
think that if you guys can continue to poke at that kind of user base where it becomes just like OG cult classic kind of cartoon, I think that you guys would be super successful going into 2024.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very encouraging that we did have that reception, even if it was only for that one episode that we really feel like we had a hit. But yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. You know, going to conferences, I've pretty consistently run into people, and a lot of times it's like you said, it's kind of like they're not going to come right out and say it, but maybe when they hear like, oh, you're involved in that cartoon, and then I hear, oh yeah, I've seen that, and you know, and so on and so forth. So it's been good to see. And yeah, for the profanity thing, I mean, the main reason that I pushed hard on that is I had you know, probably a half a dozen or so people come up to me at different conferences and just basically say, I really like it and I'd love to show it to my kids, but I mean, I can't really do that. It's just too raunchy. And so we wanted to try to make it so it's a bit more accessible to a broader audience. You know, there's still some innuendos and stuff, but I would say they're more, yeah, I mean, it's not like right out in your face. Like a kid is not going to catch some of the adult jokes that are still hidden in there here and there. And that's how, you know, a lot of like Disney cartoons, they kind of do that. And so they kind of operate on a couple levels. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see how, you know, how it's received. And, you know, I feel like we've really developed as a team in terms of knowing how to get this done and getting our production processes in place. So the hope is we get a decent reception. We have enough support that we can jump right into season 2. We have outlines for season 2 and season 3. You know, Chris is, I think, ready to go. He just needs to, you know, see that there's a demand for it. And so that'll be the question that we'll find out here in a couple months' time, or well, a month and change. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the evolution of Bitcoin, or at least your perception of it. And from your perspective, how has Bitcoin itself evolved since you first became involved in it 10 years ago?
Well, you know, the technology has not changed dramatically. There have been a few forks, and that's been good to see. I mean, I think the pace of change has been appropriate, and I've tended to agree with the perspective that we should try to ossify the base layer and figure out how to add additional functionality and features and so on with higher level layers. So I've been happy to see how it's progressed. I think that the thesis, you know, versus the big blockers has proven to be true. The market has definitely accepted Bitcoin as, you know, the Bitcoin as opposed to Bitcoin Cash. I think what's been most inspiring probably for me has been seeing the development of thought and thought leadership in Bitcoin in the last, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years. You know, from Saifedean with obviously the Bitcoin Standard, Robert Breedlove. I mean, a ton of people, obviously, Saylor coming in, you know, hot with all of his takes. And I feel like there's really a cultural movement that is being birthed out of Bitcoin, and it's becoming bigger than just Bitcoin and the technology. It's you know, in some ways, I think it's kind of like analogous to, you know, American Revolution, something to that degree of potency. You know, and it even, well, let me put it this way: I think Bitcoiners have natural affinity because we care about truth. I think in the end, that's the thing that we all that kind of resonates and pulls us all together. And so if you care about truth and money, which I think is what Bitcoin is, it's money without lies, deception, manipulation, distortion. It's a fair, honest money. So if you care about that, it's not a big leap to say, well, now what's going on with our food supply? You know, like, is the food honest? right? And as a book that just came out, I haven't read yet, but I'm planning to, on Saifedean's publishing list, fiat food, right? So like what's happened to our food system? And my health has improved dramatically since I cut out seed oils, for example. It's been about 3 years since I've been religiously avoiding them. And I kind of knew they're not the best before that for a few years, but really paying attention. So there's a catalyzation of thinkers, of truth seekers, of visionaries, of builders, and that are all coming together. And Bitcoin is the core of it, but it reaches beyond that in a lot of different directions. And that's really exciting because it's, to me, it's like a renaissance of thinking, of imagining. And while the clown world is burning around us, we're building something that can be the lifeboat for humanity. So it's tremendously exciting. I'm just so blown away every time I go to Bitcoin conferences, the people I run into and the projects. It's getting hard to even keep track of a percentage of what's going on. Like, cause I remember, maybe just 4 or 5 years ago, it was pretty rare to find a Bitcoin only company. And there were so many scam companies. I mean, mine included, right? I mean, so, there was so many altcoin and shitcoin projects and scams. And it's been nice to see. And part of it's because my focus has shifted, I'm sure. But nonetheless, I've seen a huge growth in Bitcoin only projects, companies, people understanding Bitcoin is the signal and the rest of this stuff is noise and scams. So I'm thrilled. I think we're really on the right track, and we're at this like kind of critical mass point where it's becoming more and more apparent to more and more people that this is what matters. And so maybe this cartoon is just a little piece of that culture that can hopefully catalyze more people, encourage more people to look for the signal and ignore the rest. And like, so, in this first season, we kind of end it with really poking fun at this guy called Craig Wrong. And, you can imagine who that's referring to, although I won't say for legal reasons. No, come sue me, Craig. Anyway, but yeah, so it's good to have, comedy is really about poking fun at people in power. And so we'll definitely have fun poking, I'm sure, over the years if this continues on at politicians and stuff. But it's more apparent that we should definitely go after the scammers in the quote crypto space. So we're definitely going to do that. I'd love to address Hoskinson's like little outrage, for example, maybe in a future season. But yeah, so it's going to be fun. I hope we can do more seasons because there's a ton of material that's just ready to be, plucked and used. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that we spoke before off air about how there's so many opportunities to talk about Bitcoin. Like even just the first few episodes that you have, like you're still in the early days of Bitcoin, like 2010, 2011, 2012. Like so many things have happened. Like you haven't even gotten to the block size wars. You haven't gotten to all these different things that we're seeing in the space now. So, I mean, I think it just gives Bitcoin and Friends this huge open runway to talk about tons of different things. And I just don't see how it couldn't be successful with the way that society is now with the, the instant gratification. People are really tapped into YouTube or tapped into their mobile applications. And I think that cartoons are always a good way to get people to pay attention to something that's controversial, or really high level on a technical scale. So I think that Bitcoin and Friends is going to definitely find a way to engage a new audience that might be skeptical or not really truly in the know about what Bitcoin is about. And it's always helpful to have people like you in the space that can create that kind of synergy between cartoons and real life narratives.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. And I do think the timing is much better. Of course, every year Bitcoin has more notoriety. There's more people that are willing to even just take a little bit of a look. And and launching with all eight episodes ready to go and having a very tight release schedule, I think is going to help a lot too. I'm hopeful that we're not going to have the viewership drop off. And then I think that the biggest challenge will probably be how do we keep our audience from totally losing interest in the period between the end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2. And that's where I think, we're playing around with different ideas, but effectively we're thinking to do something maybe on a weekly basis that's not going to be a cartoon, but, like a hangout. And perhaps we bring other Bitcoiners on and, essentially just do sort of like a podcast kind of show. Because we realize we've got to keep ourselves in front of people and keep them entertained. And the other thing we'll probably bring back, we used to do these little vlogs, which were usually like, 30 seconds, 60 second, and usually, riffing on a current event sort of thing. So I could see that coming back. That's a much more doable, a vlog a week, for example, is maybe a couple hours of animation work. So that's not too crazy. But yeah, I mean, I'm very hopeful. We just want to do what we can to entertain and hopefully enlighten and give some people a path into Bitcoin, into the broader community and what we're doing. So yeah, so thank you for having me and for giving me this platform and sharing it with me and everything.
Advice to new Bitcoiners, right? What advice would you give to someone just starting to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole?
Well, I guess it's probably a little cliche to say, but educating yourself is really the most important first step. And by that, I mean, understanding, I think, the why of Bitcoin. Why does this matter? And really being clear on what it's even about in terms of the goals of this project. Understanding why money is broken, and that government is never going to fix it because it has no incentive to do so, and how those misincentives and disincentives really distort so much of the world around us, in terms of the price of goods and services, bubbles in the economy where the housing bubble, for example. I think we're going to see most likely a pretty big correction in the United States in housing, because there's been misincentives, because of all these distortions, money printing, government tax subsidies and incentives, and all sorts of things that distort markets. So, in other words, take some time to look at some of the Austrian economics thinkers, Mises, Rothbard, etc. That's Hayek. That's a really worthwhile first step. Economics in One Lesson is a great book by Henry Hazlitt. That's one of the first ones I read that really got me sort of down the Austrian rabbit hole. But just understanding money and that, and really the mechanics of it and economics, I think, is important, because Bitcoin exists because the economic system is completely broken, and we need to fix it. So I think getting that foundation is critical. And then probably beyond that would be, understanding the mechanics of Bitcoin is good. I think understanding why proof of work is important is critical, and why proof of stake is basically the existing system already. So Vitalik and all these people, Haskins and Cardano, all these projects, they're just basically reinventing the broken system on a new fancy digital schema, but it's still the money today. If you have money and power, you control the money and you decide the rules, and that's what proof of stake is. They've just reinvented the corrupt system we already have. So understanding proof of work is different. It's egalitarian, it's open, it's free for anyone to participate. That's critical. And then understanding how to use a wallet, how to back up with a seed phrase, how to safely store that. With Bitcoin, you have to be sovereign. You have to control. You have to know how to control and secure your own money. There's no bank or person or hotline to call if you're going to do it in a self-sovereign way. And of course, there are wallets and services that will take that from you, but you're also then at their back. They control you at that point, and so you're really missing the benefits of Bitcoin if you have your money on Coinbase or some platform like that. In other words, don't just dip your toe. I think if you're going to get into Bitcoin, you need to do the work to understand it and to get it. And if not, you can very well easily get scammed or have your money just stolen from you. And so that's important. Yeah, and that's basically it. Do the work.
And my last question for you is more along the lines of personal significance. So on a personal level, what does Bitcoin mean to you, and how has it impacted your life?
Hmm. I can't even imagine what my life would be like today without Bitcoin. I mean, it's really Bitcoin is the reason I became a software developer, and I'm currently working. I have some Bitcoin related projects that are kind of underground that have not been launched yet, and perhaps someday in the future we'll talk about those. But I have a day job in fiat software development work, just regular old software. But it's been a huge blessing to be able to travel all over the world and work remote. I've lived in Mexico. I'm currently living in Barbados. My wife is Nigerian. I was in Nigeria for 5 months this year. So it's just been tremendous, and a lot of that is thanks to Bitcoin. Partly because of the freedom financially that I have because of owning Bitcoin, but it's also just you can really stand with a spine straight when you know that you have money that no one on earth can take from you, no government, no person, and so it's the ultimate insurance policy or security, or however you want to put it, to know that you have that. And with that, kind of with that wind behind my sails, it's been tremendous to see where life has been able to take me, and what I've been able to do. And I have so much more to accomplish. But a lot of it is thanks to Bitcoin, and because money that works liberates us and gives us freedom, gives us optionality. And I'm so grateful to Satoshi, to Bitcoin, to Bitcoiners, to all the people who have worked tirelessly. Many of them sometimes not even really getting paid, or making meager amounts of money relative to their contributions. So it's I'm very far from a communist, but it's like seeing people work together in this way is I will be gracious and say that's what the communists would like to see. You know what I mean? That, like, that's their dream, is everyone's working together. But unfortunately, you're not. Well, I should say fortunately, actually, you need money. You need a way to signal value and to coordinate society. So you can't centralize that. You can't give it to a government. But Bitcoin could bring the world that these naive socialist types have wanted, through fixing the money. So yeah, it's amazing to be a part of it. I'm so grateful, and we're just getting started. This is about ready to start getting very interesting. And I think we're getting to the they fight you phase of this. With Warren, kind of coming out and trying to kill Bitcoin basically through legislation. Now, good news is she's never passed a law apparently that she submitted. I think she's like a 0 for 300 something. So that's good news. But nonetheless, it could get to the point where some of us have to move, and I'm in Barbados. I'm an American citizen, but I'm looking more and more at, other countries, Mexico, El Salvador. I think probably longer term, I'm going to end up settling out of the U.S. and just so that I can be sure that what I'm working on can't be, legislated away. But of course, we need people in the U.S. fighting there too. But yeah, I'm very grateful to Bitcoin and Bitcoiners.
Yes, I'm very grateful for you too, Rob. I think that you are a beacon in this space, and I think that people such as yourself are going to be, etched into history of this protocol as we continue to grow and mold each other as Bitcoiners. So I just want to thank you for taking time to be on the Bitcoin Source. This conversation has been super impactful for me. I gained a friend while traversing El Salvador as Bitcoiner. So I think that we'll have a long-term conversation on this as time goes on, and I will be doing my part to make sure that I project Bitcoin and Friends, that as many people as possible can watch it, share it, like it, so that you can be successful next year. So thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dadu. Yeah, good meeting you, brother. And I appreciate everything you're doing too, man. It's inspiring, just people stepping up and getting the job done. So we're going to do this together.